and I see this like matchstick that was used. It looked like it was coming up and down the water, and I see it disappear. And I go, dang. So here comes another matchstick, like coming down. So I pick it up, and it's the top part of the wing of a Hendrickson nymph. And the Hendrickson nymph body was hanging subsurface. So I said, well, what if I did this? I went back to where I was staying. I got on the vise and tied up a couple different things. The next time that scenario came up again, I threw that out there, and on the second take, I caught an 18-inch brown.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon.
Hey listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Destination Angler Podcast, brought to you by J.P. Ross Fly Rods, makers of happiness, one rod at a time. Get outside and simply fish. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we have shows on two crown jewels of Colorado, the South Platte River and the Arkansas River. And how about the Lower Sacramento Rivers for some big stripers? So be sure to subscribe to catch all the new Destination Angler podcasts and tag a buddy you'd like to go with. And while you're at it, be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on the Rio Grande River near Taos, New Mexico. Man, let me tell you, Nick Street and the Taos Fly Shop are sitting in a little-known mecca for fly anglers, and man, they really got it going on down there. Today we have a really special show for all you technical anglers and fly tyers, because today our destination is the hallowed grounds of the Beaverkill River in the Catskills Mountains, just a few hours north of New York City. And our guest is expert fly designer and guide Joe Rist, owner of Trout Town Flies, Roscoe, New York. Considered the birthplace of American dry fly fishing, the Beaverkill is often called the most celebrated trout stream in America, and for good reason. It's a freestone river steeped in history with an incredible diversity of hatches and known for highly selective trout, creating some of the best dry fly fishing in the East. From storied stretches such as Hendrickson's Pool, Whirling Eddy, and Junction Pool, to famous dry fly patterns such as the Quill Gordon, the Gray Wolf, and the Rat-Faced McDougal, to famous anglers and tyers such as Theodore Gordon, Lee Wolf, and I might add Joe Rist, the Beaverkill continues to produce patterns, techniques, and traditions that make the sport of fly fishing something to aspire to. Joe is a third-generation angler who has spent most of his life plying these waters and developing some of the most creative and effective patterns I've ever seen. And man, are they deadly. So listen in as Joe gives us the lowdown on the Beaverkill from top to bottom, and be sure to stick around for the back half of the show for a masterclass in fly tying and technical fly fishing skills. Well, Joe, thanks for being on the show, and welcome.
Hey, thanks, Steve, for having me. It's really a unique opportunity for me to tell you all about the Catskill Rivers.
Heck yeah. So tell me, how is the Beaverkill fishing right now? You guys got quite a bit of rain recently.
Yeah, I'm looking out my window at it right now, and it's a coffee mess. It's the color of coffee. It's up with more rain predicted today. So right now there's not a lot going on.
Okay. Does the Beaverkill handle rain pretty well typically?
Well, the Beaverkill is a freestone, and it's regulated by Mother Nature. It does go up over the banks during heavy rains, and there's some severe floodings. But in a couple of days, it'll drop real quick.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah. Well, Joe, you've been fishing these waters, since the 1960s, right?
Yeah. My dad introduced me to the rivers up here and the reservoir systems and stuff like that. I owe a lot to him. For introducing me to fishing. I always said to my friends and stuff, some people, when they're born, they're given a pacifier. I think my dad stuck a red and white bobber in my mouth.
Oh, bobber. So it was spin fishing back then, huh?
Well, I started out, worm and bobber, and then graduated up to the Phoebes and Meps. And one day in the car coming up here, I said to him, what are those guys doing in the river waving a stick? And he goes, it's fly fishing. He goes, it's hard. You won't like it. One Christmas, I got a starter kit, and he was absolutely right.
You didn't like it at first, huh?
It was tough.
Yeah.
But, I stuck with it and learned, and over time, I got kind of good at it.
Oh, no, I bet you did. After all these years of fishing and guiding up there, do you have a story or two that really sticks out in your mind?
Well, yeah, there's a couple. One day I was doing a family of 4 on the Willowweemock. They were kind of learning how to fly fish, mother, father, son, teenage son, and a little 8-year-old girl. And they were all doing fairly well. And where we do the lessons and teach, there's a bridge that crosses over. And I was with the little girl, and I saw a fish rise on the bank after the father and the son caught a couple small stockies. And she made the cast with the gray spent caddis to the bank, and she mended it. And, all she's holding is a 3-weight, 7'6" rod. And lo and behold, she hooks Bubba. And, between me and her father coaching her and helping her and the guys cheering on the bridge, this little girl brought in a 22-inch brown that couldn't care less about the size of the fish. All the guys are in awe. And I'm like, oh my God, it's one I would have liked to have had. And she couldn't care less.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. Did the mom and the dad have any idea how fortunate she was?
Yeah, Dad did. Dad knew what she caught. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And, I had a fella from Russia that took some fly fishing lessons in some schools. And, on his own, he wasn't doing so well. And he hired me for a morning of fishing, half day, and took him to the Willow. And, he landed about a dozen fish. Maybe the smallest one was a 12, 14-inch fish. But at the end of the session, he goes, "This was the most religious moment I've ever had in my life." He goes, "This was awesome." And I knew I hit a home run with him. But I think the most touching one that I had was a grandfather from Oregon hired me to teach his 10, 11-year-old grandson how to fly fish. And everybody in his family didn't care less about fly fishing, but his grandson seemed to be interested. So I took him over on the Willowweemock, and again, it's a safe place for young people to try to learn how to fly fish. And when he put his first brown trout in the net, the grandfather came off the bank down in his waders, and he was literally crying. I mean, wow. I said to myself, my God, I just hit a home run. And, he goes, "Joe, get in next to my grandson so I can take a picture of you and him with his first fish." And I said, "Listen, it's not about me at this moment." And I said, "It's about you and your grandson. You get in the picture." And I says, "This is what fly fishing is all about." I go, what a moment.
That's amazing.
Every novice that I take out that wants to learn how to fly fish, not everyone lands that fish the first time. But when they do, and they put it in the net, and you look up in their eyes, and you can see they say to themselves in a way, "I did this. I put a fish in the net." And I go, that to me is what guiding is all about. That moment, that joy, that eye contact, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I'll say creating moments. That's fantastic. Did you get a chance to get out and fish much yourself?
Depending on the weather, but I fish almost every night. I'm in a situation where I have a house in Dutchess County, but I live in a trailer in a campground on the Beaverkill. It's a seasonal place. I have nothing else to do after I lock up my shop at night. So I go and fish the East Branch, the Beaverkill, or the Willowweemock. I explore different sections of the river. I do fish every night, and I also try to use some experimental flies that we'll whip up to see if it works.
Okay. So like a learning experience for you then to get out at night and fish.
Yeah, you're always teaching yourself.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right, so as I was getting ready for this show, I came across a New York Times article that said to celebrate opening day on the Beaverkill is a little like observing Christmas in Bethlehem. So what do you think of that? Is that true?
Well, it's true to the diehards. It's a special moment. I don't think it's all about catching that fish. I think it's a time of reflection. I think when people enter the water on opening day, they're thinking about the past and friends. And then some of the younger people who enter the water are looking to the future and see what kind of path that will take them. I think opening day is important. It's also probably one of the most miserable days around here, but it's important to the angler, I think, to get out on the water.
Why is it miserable?
Oh, it's cold. It could be snowing. The Catskills are unpredictable with weather. Like almost every opening day for the last couple of years, it's been snow, cold in the 20s, maybe the 30s. But as the temperatures rise, it gets to be one of the best fisheries in the East.
No kidding. Opening weekend is when?
Well, it's changed this year. In the past, it was always April 1st, opening day. But now New York State changed its regulations where we have all year fishing, meaning that you can fish all year long, but after October 15th, it's catch and release only. So,
okay.
Opening day, I don't know if they'll still carry it as April 1st, but I hope they still kind of hold some sort of tradition on that day.
I gotcha. In talking about the Beaverkill, what is it that makes this river so special? Obviously, I touched on some of those things in my opening, but in your mind, what makes this river so special?
Oh, man, the history. The people who entered the water back in the 1800s and the 1930s up to the 1960s, the pioneers of fly fishing and the inventors of flies and little gadgets and things like that. Think about you stepping in the water with Theodore Gordon once fished, or where Lee Wolf once fished, or Walton Winnie and Harry and Elsie Darby fished. Paul Jurgensen fished this water. Art Flick. Over by the Esopus, you had Preston Jennings, and Babe Ruth used to visit the Esopus and fish there.
Huh.
But this whole area on the Beaverkill is pretty historic. It's just a beautiful river.
Right. Say a little bit more about some of those folks you just ticked off there. Like, who were some of those folks? Like Theodore Gordon, right? He goes way back, right?
Yeah, Theodore Gordon, the Quill Gordon fly, late 1800s to about, 1915, he passed away somewhere there. But he was innovative in fly fishing and creation of dry flies and stuff like that. Then you had, for me, it's Harry Darby and Ed Hewitt. Harry Darby was a pioneer with Walt. Actually, Walt and Harry went to school together. And in Roscoe, they learned fly fishing. And together, they took that out and became really good fly tiers. And in 1928 or something, they opened up a little shop in Roscoe to sell flies. And then they went their own ways and made their own names. But
nice.
Yeah. And Ed Hewitt, very instrumental. He was more into the conservation end of the fishing thing. His stream was his laboratory. He created more projects on the stream to make the habitat of the trout better. And to this day, some of the structures still stand. So pioneers like that, I really appreciate what they did to today.
Yeah. And so what are some of the more famous fly patterns that these guys have come up with? So we mentioned the Quill Gordon. What other ones?
Well, Harry Darby had a fly called the rat-faced McDougal. And the proper name for it before it was called that was called the Beaverkill Bastard. And the reason why they changed the rat-faced McDougal is because some woman was in the fly shop and it was inappropriate for them to say that. And the rat-faced McDougal was kind of an interesting story because Harry Darby went into the Navy and in his downtime tied the flies, but his wife Elsie could actually trim the flies better than him. So he would send them back to Elsie to trim them and sell them. And Harry was also good at tying the never sink skater. He tied them for Ed Hewitt, and Ed Hewitt would sell them or use them, but he would tie them by the gross. I mean, they tied a lot of never sink skaters.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
These fly patterns, I can remember my grandfather talking about these fly patterns back in the 1960s. And I can remember, tying some of these in the 1970s, like that rat-faced McDougal. Didn't know the story behind that one. I don't know that people would have minded the old name today, but you've got a lot of women who are coming up from New York City and fishing, right?
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's only 2 hours away. And there must have been a couple of newspaper articles or magazine articles there over the last few years, but the women from Brooklyn, New York are coming up here in numbers. And it's great to see them entering the water. But women overall now are joining their husbands or boyfriends in the stream, and they're becoming very independent. And It's really good. You know, I have 2 daughters and a wife. I wouldn't be able to teach my daughters and my wife how to fly fish, but I could take you and you could take them out in the water and you could teach them how to cast. They'll listen to you.
Right.
And I think that's what's going on. They'll come up to the fly shop, hire us to teach them how to fly fish, and we're more patient. We explain things better to them, and they go out there and do it. And they outperform probably their husband or boyfriend, and it's a long ride home for them.
That's great.
I can back that up because last year I introduced a free women's clinic once a month from June, July, August, and this year, September. I was only taking 8 women out at a time. I would teach, it's 3 hours, and we would loan them the gear. All they're required to do is bring a 1-day fishing license. And the beauty of it is I teach them how to cast on the grass at the Catskills Fly Fishing Museum. But once we enter the water, I have women who volunteer their time to help them tie some knots, talk about the equipment, what works for them. And it's nonstop. This year I have a waiting list for women to get into these little classes, and I'm really like, wow, this is impressive.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you've seen lots of these ladies do really well right off the bat, huh?
Yeah. For example, this past June, we took 8 women out, first timers. Out of the 8, 5 landed fish. A couple had fish on, overplayed them. They came off, but everybody had fish coming up to the fly and eating it. And my favorite one was Jean. And Jean goes, "But Joe, I didn't feel it." And I go, "Jean, it's a visual thing. See them eat it, set the hook." But they're a lot of fun to be with, and you know, it's good for the industry to see women get it in.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I also read that the Beaverkill is considered the birthplace of American fly fishing, and another place said dry fly fishing. And I was reading a little bit about the river, and I came across this statement that Washington Irving in 1819 praised the Beaverkill River, describing it as a plentiful trout population, pristine water, and utter remoteness from the chaos from the city. So do you think that's still true today?
Absolutely. Yep. I think people enter the water, no matter what the time span was or the era, enter the water for one reason: to forget about where they were, forget about the pressures of society. They just want to get in there and relax.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what's good for the Beaverkill is good for one's soul. I mean, you get in there, you listen to the riffles, you see the changes in the seasons, the wildlife along the banks, and yeah, you want to catch fish, but you know, it's more than that. You know, it's good for the soul.
Yeah, no kidding. And then there was a bunch of old fishing camps in the upper Beaverkill, correct?
Yeah. There's a lot of history back there. There's the Brooklyn Fly Fishers. There's the Beaverkill Trout Club. There's the Quill Gordon Club. There's a bunch of clubs that go back that probably to the 1800s. And usually it's like your grandfather's father had to be a member to get in. But I have to say, what the clubs do is help the habitat up in the streams. Yeah, you might not be able to fish it, but they go out there, they spend the money, they make improvements and stuff like that to make spawning better for the fish and things like that.
Oh, so that's great. But how is public access below that then?
Yeah, public access is pretty good. That's one good thing about the Beaverkill. There's a lot of it. From the Beaverkill covered bridge up on the mountain, where that was one of Theodore Gordon's favorite pools. There's a state campground there. That's all public access. From that point up into the association of private clubs, you can't fish up there. But down towards town in the valley, as I say, there's a lot of public access. There's a lot of pools. There's a lot of places where you can enter a famous pool and walk downstream, upstream, get away from the fishing pressure and find your little own oasis. But there's a lot of public access along the Beaverkill. And there's signs to say this is public access, and there's signs that say this is catch and release only, or this is a kill section if you wanted to keep a fish. But it's all marked pretty good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And in the broader Catskill region, there's some great fishing opportunities there, right? Can you give us a little bit of an overview of what else is available in the area?
Sure. So, the Beaverkill is a freestone, as is the Willow Weemock, and they are regulated by Mother Nature. And in the summertime, we could get drought conditions, and we could get a real hot summer, and then the waters are too warm to fish. So you're looking for options. And what we have in our area are tailwaters. Tailwaters are the Neversink Reservoir, the Propacton Reservoir, the Cannonsville Reservoir, and those are bottom releases from the dam. So during the summer, if it's 150 degrees air temperature and you're up near the source of the dam, it could be 48 degrees. Your knees are knocking if you're wearing shorts and waders.
Huh.
So as everyone knows, the tailwaters are cold and it's healthy for the fish. And those fish are really feisty fish and fight very well. So within a half hour of Roscoe, you have a bunch of great rivers. You have a bunch of small tributaries to these rivers, and you have a lot of places to fish.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is JP from JP Ross Fly Rods. We're happy to support Steve and sponsor the Destination Angler podcast. Do us a favor and check us out on our website, smallstreamflyfishing.com. JP Ross Fly Rods and Company has been around since 1997. We've made thousands of fly rods with one purpose, helping you get outside and be happy. So check out our line of small stream fly rods like our Muir 7-foot 5-piece 3-weight E-glass, our famous Beaver Meadow series of rods starting at 5-foot 2-weight, and don't forget our 6.5-foot 3-weight 4-piece, and now our new Beaver Meadow S-glass 6.5, 2-weight, 3-weight, all the way up to 8-foot 5-weight, all in 4-piece. Check us out, please, at smallstreamflyfishing.com. And thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you on the water.
So what are the rivers that come out of those reservoirs then? So you mentioned the Neversink. That's also a river too, right?
Yep, that's the Neversink River out of the Neversink. That's fed by the east and west branches of the Neversink. You have the Propacton Reservoir. That's the east branch of the Delaware, a tailwater.
Okay.
That travels down towards Hancock, New York. And then from the Cannonsville Reservoir, that's the west branch of the Delaware. And that travels into Hancock, where there they meet at Junction Pool and form, I guess you could say, the headwaters of the Delaware River that goes out to the ocean. Yeah. And then, you have the Esopus on the other side of the mountain. And, you have just have a great fishery all around us. And the beauty of it is, some days one side of the mountain could get hammered with rain and go off color, but the other side of the mountain didn't get it, and it's very fishable. So there's always some place to basically fish. Yeah,
right. And where does the Beaverkill flow into?
Okay, so the Beaverkill is 44 miles long. It comes out of Double Top and Graham Mountain. It flows down, and through that course, there's a bunch of smaller tributaries. The Willow Weemock is one of the biggest of tributaries to the Beaverkill. And as the Beaverkill travels down, it's a tributary to the east branch of the Delaware.
I gotcha. And so the Beaverkill has got all these famous pools, right? And I wonder if you could just kind of walk us through the more famous pools and like, how do they get their names? Because it seems like there's a story behind each of these pools.
Sure. Well, like we have Cemetery Pool, and of course the reason being there's a cemetery right next to it. But that's one of the most popular pools. Then you have Painter's Bend. Painter's Bend is a name of a bend in the river that holds a lot of fish up against the old road. Back in the day, though, in the 1800s, it was known as Panther's Bend. And Panther's Bend, over time, with pronunciation, changed to Painter's Bend. The loggers used to try to float logs down the Beaverkill, and they'd always have a little problem there. And they would always say, yeah, you know where the Panthers were on that bend. So that's how it got its name. Probably the most famous of all pools that have a nice fable to it is called Junction Pool. And that's where the Willow and the Beaverkill meet. And the fable is a trout came up to spawn one time, got to where the rivers come in right and left and didn't know which way to go because the water was so pure, it developed two heads. So every year, the Chamber of Commerce and places always have like a dinner called the two-headed trout, based on the fable of the two-headed trout coming up to spawn. But yeah, so and some of the other pools were named after families that donated their land for public access. Barnhart's Pool, Ferdenzetti, places like that.
Okay, and I know I mentioned a Hendrickson's pool. Does that have something to do with the fly? The Hendrickson and the hatch that we all fish in the spring?
Yeah, Roy Steenrod was friends with A.E. Hendrickson, and they developed the fly, the red quill. So it was named Hendrickson Pool after that.
Okay.
So that's kind of unique. And one feature the Beaverkill has that it's probably the only one in New York State. It actually has a thermal refuge. It's called the Acid Factory down near Horton. It's a small piece. It's a big bend in the river. And from bridge to bridge, it's closed from July 1st to August 31st. There's a brook that comes down into it called Horton Brook. But beneath the wall, underneath the Beaverkill, there's a cold seep that comes up. And you will see a mass of trout hanging there when the water temperatures are up over 70. And you stand there and look down, and you'll be amazed. It's like sometimes bigger than a Volkswagen Beetle. Just big black mat of fish between browns and rainbows. But what in the day, people would stand on the wall, drop a treble hook down, yank them and bring them up. Well, the state finally said enough's enough. Let the fish survive there. So they shut the fishing down in that section of the river.
Oh, right. During that time of year.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and the river has faced some challenges over the years, right? Can you talk a little bit about, some of those challenges in the past, and then how's the river doing today?
So, back in the day, the farmers and people used to dump trash in there, and the river was getting polluted. The over-harvesting of brook trout was being depleted for reasons of feeding families and foods back then in the 1800s. And the loggers was taking the hemlocks from trees and making a solution called the acid factories and making a solution for tanneries for the hides of fur. And they would dump the stuff in the rivers and making a chemical mess per se. So yeah, it was hurting. But so then people stepped up and they started to say, listen, we can no longer dump stuff in the river. We have to start implementing the stocking of trout to replace the brook trout that are next to nothing. So they introduced brown trout in about 1880 or something like that. And a little while later, the rainbow trout was introduced. So the stocking started to take place. And, what we complained about today when we stock trout, how we first catch one, it may taste like liver. They complained about the same thing back then. So, but then the river started to get pristine again. The fisheries were picking up. The fish were getting bigger. There was a little opposition to the stocking of brown trout because the fear was they were going to eat and eliminate the brook trout. But people finally realized that catching these big browns was fun and more rewarding. So that kind of dissipated. And then another threat was when the new 17 was being built, and they were going to put a lot of bridges across the Beaverkill and change floodplains and things like that. There was some opposition to that. And, it didn't stop the state from building it, but it did remove a bunch of future plans of bridges that crossed it. And Harry Darby was one of the pioneers who fought that. So the bridges, so
good for him.
That was a positive thing. And today the fishery is great. There's prolific hatches of bugs on the Beaverkill. There's a population of wild rainbows and wild browns. We do stock the Beaverkill with browns because of the amount of fishing pressure it can get. But today, the Beaverkill is in great shape.
Oh, that's great. Does it get crowded?
It can get crowded, especially last year with COVID. There was a lot of people on the river fishing. But, the most crowds occur in about the end of April, May, when it's our prime time here. People from all over the world come here and fish the Hendricksons right down to the end of the green drakes and things like that. During the summer, less pressure. Best fishing is really from 7 to 9:30 at night up here. And then in the fall, there's less pressure, but the diehard fishermen come back, the ones that the kids are back in school, no more family vacations, and they're back on the water for the olives, ISOs, things like that.
Okay. And there's options too, right? If the Beaverkill is a little, busy, there's other places you mentioned earlier that you can go as an angler.
Oh, yeah. Like the other day, Saturday, I just jumped up. I knew the rivers were a little dirty, high, and everybody was going up to the west branch of the Delaware or the upper east to fish. And I just decided, hey, I don't want to see anybody. I'm going to go up to the little brook trout streams on the in the mountains, and I had all to myself, and a bunch of brookies and a little brown I caught, and I was happy. But yeah, there's a lot of options.
That's awesome
to fish. Yeah,
that's great. Like how good in a typical day, how good can you do on the Beaverkill? Say in a month where there's some good hatches going on.
Oh yeah, you can have a 5 to 10 fish day. I've had clients have 20 fish days. When it's clicking, it's going good, and you can figure it out. Yeah, you're going to catch a lot of fish. Don't get me wrong. There are days you're humbled. Things don't click. You might get 0 to 1, maybe 2 fish. But people should come here with their mindset they are going to catch fish. So many novices come here and they realize they want to learn, but they don't expect to catch a fish. I'll hear it in the shops like, yeah, well, I'm going to learn and I probably won't catch nothing. Well, by the end of the day with myself or my guides, they're coming back. My God, I couldn't believe I put 4 or 5 fish in the net. That's one of the Beaverkill strengths, is that it's a forgiving river with a lot of riffles and stuff. The Beaverkill is a high gradient river, and it's forgiving to the novice. So they can make a mistake, but yeah, the fish will come up and still eat the bug, and they'll usually get a fish in the net.
But it sounds like it maybe has a reputation as a tough stream to fish.
A tough stream to fish?
Yeah, you're just saying that people are like, oh, I might not catch a fish.
Yeah, well, that's what they're, new people don't have the confidence yet to say, yeah, I'm going up there to catch a fish. But it's not. It's just the opposite. It's, you can find fish and the guides will get you on fish up here. You can take yourself out there. You can make a good cast and a novice can catch a fish. Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Oh, that's cool. Good to hear. So, how wide is the Beaverkill? What kind of flows are you looking at from different sections?
Okay, so Beaverkill is probably about 50 yards wide. It's not not a big wide river, and the flows fluctuate depending on Mother Nature. A good fishing flow, though, that I like is anywhere from about 300 to 500, over 1,000 CFS. CFS cubic feet per second is a little high and a little dangerous. I wouldn't recommend crossing over the river or anything like that. You could fish it in the 200 CFS range, but over 1,000, it's a little iffy.
Okay. Well, it's a good sized river then. It sounds like if it's 50 yards across, you've got plenty of room to cast. That's good probably for the novice angler. Yeah,
it's a good casting river. You can have a good back cast and you can wade out a little bit. Yeah, it's not like it's a big river and you can't get out there or nothing like that. The Beaverkill is the ideal river to fish.
So very wadeable then.
Yes. There's very few float boats. Like it doesn't see any drift boats. It might see a kayaker come down at once in a blue moon or somebody in a little pontoon boat, but it's not that kind of river.
No aluminum hatch. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Joe, let's hear your story. You're a 3rd generation angler. So how did you end up in Roscoe running a fly shop?
Yeah, if you asked me that a bunch of years ago, I would say you'd never see me there. I've always been fishing here. I've always been coming up here. I worked for the post office for 32 years, 4 years Navy gave me 36 years. And prior to retiring, I picked up my guide's license and part-time guide. I had a couple of buddies that I grew up with, Jim Corliss and John Bocchino, and together we learned how to fly fish in the Roscoe area. it started out as a day trip, fishing the Beaverkill or Willow. Then we got girlfriends, and then it was a weekend up here without them. Then we got married, and then it was a week up here without them. But we learned together. And how it came about that I got up here was I was ready to retire. I was starting to work at another fly shop down where I lived. And I saw on the train one day, the owner of Catskills Flies, Dennis Skarka, was looking for a full-time guide. So I said, what the heck? I'll give him a call and see what entails about getting up here. So he said, well, it's best to put the face to the name. Why don't you come up on a Saturday and we'll sit down and talk? Went up, and me and Dennis had a lot in common. He goes, why were you in the Navy? I said, my father was in the Army. He goes, oh, my father was in the Navy. That's why I was in the Army. And we kind of hit it off and stuff like that. And so he hired me, and I was that year I was a guide for him. And then his main guide retired and moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I became his head guide. And from there, we kind of bonded. We got stronger together. But the unfortunate part was he passed away 3 years ago to cancer. And his wife, who was in her 70s, was ready to retire. And she says to me, you were good to us. I would like to retire, and I would like you to buy the shop. And I said, listen, Ellen, I have no clue how to run a shop. I said, but would you let me run it for a year to see what it takes? And she says, yes. So during that time, so many people that followed Dennis and people that I brought into the shop said, don't close the shop, keep it going. And because of that, I talked to my wife and we said, let's buy the shop. And lo and behold, Catskills Flies is now Trout Town Flies, and I have not regretted it. The people still keep coming. I enjoy seeing them. And my philosophy is to share information. Don't be selfish. I want everybody to have a good time in Roscoe. If they do, they'll come back. They'll support the other stores around, the restaurants and the hotels and whatever. But I want them to go. They come to Roscoe, have a great time, and leave with a good feeling.
That's awesome.
That's how it all came about.
Yeah. What's your sort of your favorite thing about running a fly shop?
Just the appreciation that I get from the customers and seeing them return every year, knowing that, I'm doing it right. If I give them the information of you take this fly, go out and use it and it works, they come back and they show me pictures of the trout. I love tying flies. That's one thing our fly shop is known for, is that we tie our own flies in the shop. 75% of the flies is tied with the material hanging on our wall. So we tie a lot of dry flies, emergers, and things like that. The only thing we kind of implement in is like the basic pheasant tails, hares, airs, prince, nymphs, the attractor flies, some woolly boogers and stuff like that. We can't sit there and tie everything, but we pride ourselves on our own tied flies. We want you to catch more than one fish on our flies.
Okay, so you're tying your own flies because quality, they stay together longer, or you just want them a certain way? Exactly.
We'll go to a little bit extra, put a little glue here, a little glue there, make sure everything is right. Everybody has to be on the same page about, size, silhouette, and color. Nobody can implement something else that replaces it. So all my tires are real good. I have a fantastic tire by the name of Gene Monty. I swear to God, if he opened up, he threw 1,000 flies on the table. You couldn't tell that there was one off. I mean, he is amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. I just wonder how people do that. I mean, I love tying flies, but I can tie 2 to 3, then I got to take a break.
Yeah, I can see that because sometimes I get like that.
Yeah.
One day you could bang out 20 flies all looking the same. The next day you sit down, you can't tie one right.
Yeah. Hey, some people are just darn good at it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I walked in your fly shop and I'm a first-time angler there. So what advice would you have for me on how to fish the Beaverkill?
How to fish the Beaverkill. So it's all according to what's going on. I asked them right off the bat, do you want to fish dry flies? Can you fish tandem flies like hopper, dropper? I will give them advice about what to expect. On our board on the wall, probably as most fly shops have, is what the guides have been seeing, the bugs that are on the water temps and flows. I would recommend that. And based on their skills, say, if you're a novice, I'm going to send you to a pool where I know there's a lot of fish in and it's a little more forgiving. If you're the guy that wants some privacy and get away, we can send you up sections of the Beaverkill that way. Yeah, so it's all accordance. I try to feel them out and, send them in the right direction.
Okay. Kind of depends on what's going on, like you said. So the river is known for super prolific hatches. Can you kind of walk us through the major hatches of the season and what you're kind of doing differently for each of them?
Sure. So basically the bug season starts about the middle to end of April based on Mother Nature. You can start seeing the quill Gordons, blue quills, and little olives and some caddis. The main event is the Hendricksons by the end of April, maybe the first week of May. That brings in people from all over the world, the United States. And when the Hendricksons start petering out, the caddis really pick up, apple caddis, tan caddis, and things like that. The month of May explodes in a way where then the March browns are coming out, and then there's sulfurs and the green drakes, the 747 of mayflies. We have brown drakes, we have golden drakes, yellow drakes, and the hatches are unbelievable. I mean, some years better than others, but the one thing I would tell people to do during the caddis season, because there's so many bridges that cross the Beaverkill, bring a lot of window wash. You're going to get slammed.
Yeah.
Your car is going to look pretty ugly at the end of the day with the caddis on the water and coming off towards evening.
That's awesome.
But then, when the drakes are kind of ending, the water temperatures then are up a little bit near 70 by the beginning of June, middle of June. We watch the water temperatures closely. Sometimes we might do some morning fishing only, and by noon it might be too warm. So things like sulfur spinners or any type of spinner might be coming down from the night before. Beetles start working good, little terrestrials, maybe some olives. And then over the summer, if the Beaverkill is too warm and we can't fish it, the tailwaters save the day. If you go up close to the source of the dams, Stylesville is one on the West Branch, and the upper Downsville area, you can see hatches of sulfur start coming off by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And they might last till about 3 o'clock. So you might have some sulfurs, cahills, some isonychias, maybe some caddis, some olives. But when they peter out up there, you get in your car, have a bite to eat, and you drive to the lower sections of the tailwaters, the East Branch, West Branch. And there you can get into the evening hatch of the same bugs.
Oh, nice.
So that's a saving grace.
Okay.
And then we get in the fall, which is my favorite time, we get olives, isos, orange cahills. We get caddis still, a lot of olives. But the feed bag is on. In the fall, pre-spawn is kicking in. Trout are getting aggressive. They're starting to eat more. Water temperatures are coming down. That can be a really good time to fish. And they're aggressive on streamers. And if you have a streamer pattern that looks like a little baby brown trout or something like that, they're going to nail it. So, yeah, streamers are a big important. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say streamers on the Beaverkill, it almost sounds sacrilegious.
Yeah. When the water's up and off color and you have no other option, so you took a vacation here and, you don't want to lose your money or not, and the water's off color, you just get a dark colored streamer on, black, dark brown, or olive, something heavy, and cast it out and bring it up along the banks and those little eddies that tuck in along. You can pull out a good fish. So that's just an option that you need to have when you come to the area. A lot of people can do a lot of nymphing here. Nymphing is big when the fishing is slow. Euro nymphing is taking off. People seem to be very successful with that. So, based on the Beaverkill, it's kind of how you approach it. When you walk down to the bank, do you see birds flying back and forth? That might be an indication that there's bugs in the air. Then you get down to the water's edge and you look at the water, and then maybe there's some mayfly wings on the water, and all of a sudden you see some rings being formed. So you're saying to yourself, oh, I'm going to be dry fly fishing. And all you need to know is to capture one of those bugs on the water and just go size, silhouette, and color and put something on that'll match it and go at it. Now, if you walk down there and you saw nothing going on and you're here for the day or two, then yeah, you got to be able to adapt. And maybe you want to nymph the riffles or chuck a streamer or something like that, so you can be productive.
Okay.
You know, that's how you approach the beaver kill.
Oh, that's great. And is there anything particular that you're doing on the beaverkill that maybe is a little unique to your region in terms of techniques?
Well, you know, I don't know if there's any it's unique, but soft tackles are a way to be productive on the beaverkill, like fishing them in tandems or something like that, like an orange and partridge, or, you know, maybe a big green size 12 partridge fly, you know, swinging 2. Sometimes these fish, you know, over time get a little fishing pressure and they're kind of like leery going up to eating something on the surface. So you might swing some soft tackles, that, or fish a soft tackle like a dry fly by greasing the line. So many times, you know, they won't eat nothing that's sitting on the surface, but if you can just get that soft tackle to float in the film, they'll eat it.
Okay.
You know, there's nothing. It's just like fishing probably any other river. There's nothing really special you have to do. You just have to be willing to try different things and just adapt.
Okay. Sounds like the fish can get selective at times.
They can. They really can. They see a lot of store-bought flies made overseas. They can key on certain patterns knowing that, hey, that's bad news. Don't eat it. So the one best thing about my fly shop is we do create certain emergers that look a little different. And by doing that, you know, you can add some legs to an emerger or something and give it the little motion, and that motion equals realism. And, you know, then they might eat it. They'll say, hey, I've never seen that before. You know, so.
Nice.
Yep.
I wonder if we could get a picture of some of those flies you're talking about and put those out on the Destination Angler Facebook and Instagram page. People would probably love to see that, see what you're talking about.
Yeah. I can send you a few of those. Yep.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, I'm wondering on those sort of those flies that you might order from overseas that the fish are rejecting. Are they typically just a little too bushy, or like what are you guys doing that's different with your fly tying that seems to work well there?
I'm not knocking overseas flies or nothing like that, but we try to match the dubbings and stuff to the color of the fly in our water. So sometimes our little sulfurs, or small sulfurs, have a hint of orange in them. So we blend a little bit with some yellow and orange or something like that. But we mix furs. Like we have a fly called the DS Emerger designed by my former boss, and it's a blend of some gray, some brown, and a little bit of red to make like a mayfly emerger in the water with a little bubble back.
Cool. Yeah.
So we just try doing little things a little different to match the bugs on the water.
Okay. And what are some of your, you know, your top patterns and sizes? Like, for instance, I'm curious, you know, what are you using for a green drake pattern? How big are those? And your Hendricksons? And you mentioned an apple caddis. What the heck's an apple caddis?
Some people call it the shad caddis too. It's an early spring caddis, maybe the second week of May. It's a bright green apple body with like a light cream to white wings, and it looks like snow when it's sitting on the water. But when it's out of the water and it's out of the water for a while, it turns gray. So the apple caddis, it emerges in such numbers that most times it's being eaten underneath the water. So I tie a apple caddis emerger kind of like LaFontaine did with the bubble around it, but I don't put a bubble underneath the belly. What I do is when I bring the bubble over the body of the green, I extend the Z-line maybe just over the eye, and I clip it, and then I bring it back and make wings along the body. So like the bubble is coming off. It has a little trailing shuck. It has some partridge up by the throat to give it some legs. And I use a little bit of bleached deer hair as an indicator so I could see it riding in the film. It's deadly.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, really cool. What other patterns do you like?
Oh, well, G-Money ties a sulfur cripple with a brown biot, trailing shuck. Depending on the size of the sulfur, it could be yellow to yellow-orange. It's a bleached deer hair comparadun. We believe in vulnerability in our fly shop. So something that can't fly off the water quick and can't swim down, that's what the trout is looking for. They're going to eat it. You were talking about our green drakes. They're size 10 to 8 on our rivers. We'll do emergers with an olive green shuck, some moose tail, like yellow sulfur dubbing with the threads, and then angle. We'll do slant back deer hair and olive to make like an emerger. That works real well.
Nice.
Things like that. Yeah.
What are you doing just for like a standard Henderson? What works?
Oh, we do the traditional Catskill style with the wood duck flanks as wings and stuff like that. But that cripple pattern that I was telling you about, the sulfurs, we do the same thing in the Hendrickson pattern. So on a size 14 to 12 hook, we have a brown shuck. We do brown Nature Spirit, brown turkey biot up to the parachute post or the comparadun. And then we'll put in a pink thorax per se, and then the wing. So again, another sign of vulnerability.
Do you like to twitch those flies a little bit if you're in some slower water, or do you just like them to be real steady and not moving?
I like them to, it's a good question because sometimes steady down, they'll eat it. And also sometimes twitching a caddis or twitching a fly here and there will trigger a hit. Sometimes that fish, after a lot of fishing pressure, is looking for something to move on its body. So, yeah. But I have a fly that I tie, and I actually don't use it I don't sell it in the shop yet, but it's called the brown floating nymph. And it's a parachute pattern on a curved hook. And all it is a brown shuck, hare's ear chocolate, I think it's 34 dubbing, hare's ear dubbing, a little copper wire, parachute post, chocolate dubbing thorax with a dun wing. And how I came about that fly was really, really good. It showed me that I was finally paying attention to the water. And I'm fishing the West Branch of the Delaware during the Hendrickson hatch. And all my favorite flies that I used to catch the trout there were letting me down. I wasn't even getting a look. But I look up and down the river, and nobody else was catching fish. So then I said, all right, back off, look at the water. And I see this like matchstick that was used. It looked like it was coming up and down the water. And I see it disappear. And I go, dang. So here comes another matchstick like coming down. So I pick it up, and it's the top part of the wing of a Hendrickson nymph. And the Hendrickson nymph body was hanging subsurface. So I said, well, what if I did this? I went back to where I was staying. I got on the vise and tied up a couple different things. The next time that scenario came up again, I threw that out there, and on the second take, I caught an 18-inch brown. And that pattern, I'll tie that pattern with a parachute from like a 12 to about an 18. I'll match the size of the mayfly on the water. From a 20 to a 24, I do the shuck and the body brown, but I have to use like 2 pieces of CDC as a wing on the emerger hook. And I got to tell you, it performs. It's to me, it's just maybe a dead nymph that didn't make it, a drowned nymph, but it works.
That's an incredible story. That the trout would be keying in on something that's so unique like that. Like you said, looked like a matchstick floating towards you.
Yeah.
Do you carry like a little dip net? Like, how are you scooping these? It's kind of a dumb question, but how are you scooping these insects off the water? I have like a baseball hat that's got, netting in the back, and that's what I use. But what do you use?
Yeah, one time I had the little white aquarium net that I would use to scoop things up. And then over time, I saw advertised somewhere like the same type of net that was in black with 2 wooden handles. And I could roll that up and put it in my vest in the back. And when I'm getting stumped, I just pull that out. It's probably about a foot long when I pull it out. Hold it under the water and see what's coming down. But that's how I came about that. Yeah.
Do you ever stomach pump?
No, I don't do that. No. I try to. I'm pretty conscientious of the fish. Fish are a beautiful thing, and as a guide, it's kind of economic to put the good ones back as fast as you can, so you can have the next client on it. But like for example, if you were with me and you caught a big brown, I'm going to give you one shot with the camera. You're going to hold it in the water a long time, bring it up, click, let them go. Yeah,
I got you.
Our rainbows up here, in my opinion, are pretty special. They are the McLeod strain from California. And the story goes, back in the day of about, 1870, 1890 or something, the O&W Railroad ran up along the rivers, and up by Hancock, New York somewhere, the train broke down. And back then when they stocked fish, they had it on ice. So they had no clue what to do, but the ice was melting pretty fast. So the conductor removed the fish and dumped them into the West Branch of the Delaware. Well, that was probably the greatest thing that the river could have ever have gotten. And this is before the dams. So the dams, back then the waters were warm. So these rainbows acclimated well. In all honesty, I mean, you hook a 17 to 19, 20-inch rainbow from that strain of fish, you're into your backing as fast as you could blink your eye. And they come out of the water and they rip pretty good. It's an amazing fish.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the main stem and the West Branch and now the East Branch. It's a wild fishery. I mean, don't get me wrong. The tributaries to those rivers are stocked. Sometimes fish find their way down from them. Pennsylvania below us stocks some rivers or some trout in the rivers down in the tribs there, and they find their way in. But I would say 95% of the fish in those rivers are wild. And
up in the Delaware area.
Yeah. And in all honesty, from the Beaverkill and those rivers, you can catch 20 to 25 inch browns, sometimes bigger. A big rainbow is probably anywhere from, 16, 17, 19 inches, wild. But, those are special fish.
Yeah, I'll say. Sounds like a tremendous fishery. Like I might need to do a show on the upper Delaware next. Hey, Joe, tell me I read on your website, you were talking about the body language of a fish, and I'm kind of curious, what that means. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, that's one thing a guide should be able to see. When they're rising on the surface, what's that fish telling you? How is he eating the bug coming down to him? Is his head coming out of the water and he's eating the dun on top? Or is he rolling just beneath the film of the water, and all you see is his dorsal fin or his tail? He's rolling, maybe eating the nymphs that are submerged right there or coming up to the top. So that helps a guide determine what kind of hook he's going to use in dry fly pattern to that fish. So, if I see the head come out of the water, maybe I'll put on a traditional Catskill style fly. I might put a parachute on or a caparadun or something. But if I see him rolling, then I'm putting the curved hook dry fly on, like a lightweight scud or something, and based on the insect. But if I put my brown floating nymph on, he'll eat it. But he's eating that emerger hanging in the water, and that's what that helps a guide be more productive catching the client catching fish. Just watching the body language. What's he doing? He could be subtly sipping, so gentle he might be sucking in spinners. So.
Right.
And then, of course, if he's exploding out of the water, as there might be eating caddis. So.
Sure. Right.
You really want to study what's he eating,
Yeah. So if you're seeing them, they're coming up, but I think you said they're rolling. You mean like you're just kind of seeing the backs of the fish? You don't see their noses
Correct.
Poking out of the water? Okay.
Yep. You're just seeing the back.
Okay. So that's subsurface, maybe a merger or something like that. A cripple.
Yep. Or even a soft hackle wet flies, right under the film.
Okay. And you're throwing those soft hackles sometimes down and across, but a lot of times you're throwing them like a dry fly.
Yeah.
Just a little under the, okay.
Yeah, that's one thing Dennis taught me. Fish a soft hackle like a pheasant tail, soft hackle like a dry fly. Dead drift it down to that fish, or cast up and do a tuck cast and let it go down to that fish. that hackle going around moves a little bit, and that realism shows like maybe it's emerging, and maybe that's all it takes for him to eat it.
Yeah. And you say tuck cast. Can you talk about that? Because I know what you're talking about, but there may be some people that don't.
Oh, yeah. So what it is, there's a fish below you downstream, and most people will cast their line down to it, but the line will extend all the way out and land on the water, and it's not moving down. So what you do is you kind of cast the length of the line, but before it even comes down, you're pulling your rod tip up and into your body. And as soon as you do that, you lower the tip to the water, so you have a pile of slack in front of you, and allow the current to take that fly down to that fish in a natural way. That's one of the key things about fishing up here in any of the rivers. Not to say you can't catch a fish casting upstream or across, but you're more successful if you can get above the fish and have the current take the fly down to the fish. They don't want to see any leader. They don't want to see nothing come down first except that fly.
Wow. So that's pretty selective, I would say. I mean, it's not every fishery do I hear that you need to do a downstream presentation to really do well.
Yeah, and more so on the tailwaters. The tailwaters are 75% flat. They're a low gradient river. And by that, you have to be above the fish, drop it down soft, probably use a 12 to 15 foot leader too, and have that current take it down to that fish's line. And I always say, if you can catch a fish on the East Branch of the Delaware, one or two fish, you can catch fish anywhere in the world because that's how selective they are.
No kidding. And long leaders, what X are you typically going down to?
So based on the size of the fly. So I always tell these newbies that you take the size of the fly, divide it by 3, and that's your ballpark leader. But, in the spring, we use a lot of 4X leaders, and we'll build off of those based on the size of the fly. By summertime now, you're into 6, 7X. But
oh, wow.
I guarantee you that if you use 6 or 7X on the main stem of the Delaware, or maybe the West Branch, depending on the size, he's going to shake his head and break you off.
Right. So what do you do?
Yeah, you probably throw C4 at the fish. But
okay.
But you really have to tie good knots, both to the fly and to the tip it to the leader. If you're adding anything, you got to tie really good flies, and you don't want too much slack. If you have slack on a big fish on these rivers and you set the hook, you're breaking it off by the surgeon's knot or the blood knot. But you're just going to have to make that drift perfect. I mean, so 5X at this time of the year is actually kind of big on some of the on some of the flies, but maybe you have to use it if you can handle a rod and you've been down the road and it ain't your first rodeo. 6X, would be good.
6X downstream presentation would be ideal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you had to use 7X, what I've learned is don't use a long piece of 7X to your leader. To keep it short. The shorter the 7X, the stronger it is.
Interesting. Okay. And you like a double surgeon's knot to tie those tippets onto your line?
I do triple surgeon's knot. Yeah. The reason being speed. I'm trying to get the client, on the fish and keep them fishing. And I just do an improved clinch knot to the dry flies.
So you do like an improved versus just a standard clinch knot.
Right. Yeah. You don't want no slippage. And the most embarrassing thing that can happen to a guide is to have the end of the leader come back in a pigtail from a bad knot.
A little squiggly line. Yeah, that's no good. You know what happened then, don't you?
Yeah. And the other things is on the Beaverkill, you're allowed to fish, multi-flies. Some places you can only fish one fly. So sometimes we're searching for fish. It could be a little dead. So you could do you take a huge stimulator, maybe orange in color, and maybe 15 inches down, tie a soft tackle. And maybe from there, depending on the depth of the water, you can add a third fly to put a beathead, whatever, pheasant tail, prince, nymph, or what. But you're covering 3 columns of water because you want your client to keep the action going. You want him to be entertained. And once you kind of figure out where they are, then you can adjust.
That's a great setup. And in the summer, how small are you going on those pheasant tails?
Based on the size of the flies, sulfurs in the summer can be 18s to 20. Olives can be, 20s. Prince nymphs, because the ISOs are around, you can get away with a size 12 to 10. Hare's airs always work good. Little copper johns, things like that. We have a lot of caddis patterns for nymphs that we tie in the shop, dark green, peacock, bright green, things like that. Yep.
Okay. And one more question. When you're fishing that downstream presentation, so you get a drift over fish, he doesn't take it. Then what do you do? Do you let it just drift beyond the fish and slowly pull it back up, or how do you get your cast back?
Yeah, exactly. You let it pass the fish. You keep your rod out and bring the line, strip it in at an angle away from him, and then pick it up and then drop it over in his lie area and have it go back down. That's a good question because even if you're fishing across or even up, what I see a lot of new people do is they'll make a bad cast and pick it up in front of the fish right away because he wasn't happy with the cast. And I tell them, make a bad cast, play it out, let it go down past the fish. I said, even if you make a good cast and you mend and it goes over the fish, he doesn't eat it, let it pass him 2-3 feet, pick it up and do it again. And then I tell him, if that doesn't happen, think in your head what you have to do. Is it the fly you have on? Is it the position you have in the stream? Maybe you're just not getting the right presentation to him. You can move upstream a little bit or move to where you might make the right angle and get the men and go over him. So I want them to think all the time, too, how to get this fish to eat their fly.
Yeah, Joe, great tip. So what would be, if you could leave us with one great tip or the number one thing you need to be thinking about when you come to the Beaverkill to be successful, what would that be?
Patience. Bring patience. Out west, you can have action all day long. There's a lot of fish per square mile. Here, maybe in the east, we have a little bit more fishing pressure. Fish wise up by June. You just got to take your time, take a deep breath once in a while, look at the water, and have some patience. And if you do, and you'll be more successful. Good example was a few years ago, a woman from Philadelphia hired me, and I had her on the lower Beaverkill in Ben Gray's pool, and caddis were coming off like crazy. The fish are coming up, eating them. I'm changing dry fly patterns for caddis left and right. Finally, nothing, not even a look. So I said, Joe, have some patience. Look at the water. What's the water telling you? I look at the water, and it was a gray spent caddis in a 16. As soon as I changed, she caught a beautiful 17, 18-inch brown, and it was on, and it just taught me a lot to just take a deep breath, bring the patience with you to the stream, and it will happen.
Yeah. Boy, it's easy to forget that. You just want to wade in. You're so excited. You just want to wade in and put on what the guy at the fly shop tells you to put on and start casting. And patience maybe is the best way to go about it.
Yeah. And the other thing that, they do too is they wade right into the middle of the river right away instead of having some patience and looking at the bank right next to them. They could be up against the bank sippers, and they're right there.
Oh, man. Yeah, they're money.
Yep. You just got to slow down and look.
Yeah, very, very good. All right. So tell me about some local favorite watering holes for the hungry, thirsty angler after a day on the water, someplace that's friendly to the angler.
There's a few good places in Roscoe. Roscoe is an up-and-coming town again. There's some people putting some money into it, nice stores and stuff, but there's 3 breweries in town: the Roscoe Brewery, the Catskill Brewery, and Upwards Brewery. All have great beer. If you like to sit back and sample that stuff, it's there. Right behind my fly shop, there's a place called Do Good Spirits. It's a distillery. Not that I drink any vodka, but people tell me it's the best vodka around. So, that's there for people to do during the middle of the day when maybe fishing is not good or the rivers are blown out. They all serve some food. And also they serve finger food. You can get something to eat there too while you, relax and listen to some music on the weekends. During the summer, they have some bands.
Oh, fun.
There's 2 golf courses in the area. So if you're a fly guy and golfer, that's there to do. There's a lot of hiking trails in our area. But there's a couple of good restaurants, and There's the Riverside Cafe and Motel, Raimundo's Italian Restaurant. A new one opened up called the Junction Roscoe, named after Junction Pool. The owners are fly fishermen, so they cater to the fly fishermen in the hours. So if you're on the water for sulfurs or something till 9:30 at night, they're open at the bar. You get a burger or something. And then you have, if you're into prime rib, the Rockland House up the road is right there. A great place with Tommy Rosio and his family. Tommy's claim to fame is eat here or we'll all starve.
Okay. I guess I'll go to the Rockland House. That's great.
Yep.
Oh, man, What a great rundown, Joe. Well, hey, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show. You did an awesome job.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
And I hope to see you all on the water someday, you know?
Hey, I need to get out that way. Honestly, I've not been to this part of the woods, and I would love to get out there and fish that. You know, maybe I'll run into Rip Van Winkle or the Headless Horseman or something, right? Isn't that all those books are from that area?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Oh, speaking of books, if somebody wanted to read a good book, Mac Francis's Land of Little Rivers talks about the history of this area. Mac is also coming out with a book about Harry Darby called The Catskill Fly Tire. There's a lot of good books about the Catskill region that people could read about and learn. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, very good. Well, Joe, how can people get in touch with you to book a trip or just talk fishing?
Oh, man, hey, just go online, trouttownflies.com, see what I offer, or they can reach me at email at joe@trouttownflies.com. I'll respond to your emails, or our shop phone number is 607-290-4107. We're open 7 days a week, 8 to 5.
Okay. And you got a Facebook and Instagram page?
Yeah, I do Instagram, Trout Town Flies. And I do Instagram, and you'll see all the little things I post there.
All right, very good. Well, Joe, I wish you extraordinary success in all that you're doing and all your adventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening. We'll be sure to post Joe's contact info on the Destination Angler website and pictures of Joe's those really unique patterns that he's talking about. Hopefully we can get a few pictures of those on our Facebook and Instagram page, so please check that out. As always, our music is by our Brothers Fountain, and be sure to give us a share, like, or follow on Instagram and Facebook, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Hope you enjoy the show, and we will see you again soon.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea, but I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.